The sound.
The sound of Essex. And all the music you love. BBC. BBC Essex.
If you are regular to the programme, we do 2 travel bulletins an hour, and quite often the Dartford crossing, the QE2 bridge and the Dartford tunnel are mentioned regularly. And if you were trying to get across the QE2 bridge earlier this morning, you'd have faced a delay, but that has probably become the norm, hasn't it? So could the fabled new Lower Thames crossing actually make our journeys far quicker and far less stressful? But it does seem to be a bit of a never-ending story, with the idea of a new crossing first being talked about in 2009. 14 years later, we still don't have one. There isn't even one being built at the moment. But are we now far closer to getting one? Maybe you're pleased about this. Maybe you live in Thurrock and are one of the many homeowners who will feel the impact. I always say, have a listen to the people we get on the programme and give me a call with your conclusions. 0800 111 4041 is the number to call. Joining me is Emily Dawson, Head of Benefits for the Lower Thames Crossing Project with National Highways. Hi to you, Emily.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming on the programme today. Shall we start at the beginning? Every time I talk about this, Emily, there's it's step by step. We've got planning for this and planning for that. Let's start at the very, very beginning. Why do we need a new Thames crossing?
So I think you just alluded to it actually in your introduction. Dartford is under unsustainable pressure. We're seeing far more vehicles trying to use it every day than it was designed for. It was actually designed when it was built for 135,000 vehicles each day. We regularly see over 150,000. And actually on those really busy days, the days when we have real challenges there, it's something like 180,000 vehicles a day. It's congested. The team is operating 24/7 to try and keep it moving. That then has an impact on air quality. There are accidents. It's not safe for people. We desperately need additional capacity and a new connection across the river to help businesses to grow and do more business in the region, but also to help to improve the quality of life for those local communities who, as you say, are impacted by that uncertainty of how long their journey will take them on a daily basis.
So it's first muted in 2009. That's the first references we found back through our archives. Where are we now? What stage of the process are we actually at for getting a new Thames crossing? It seems we've been talking about it for years.
Indeed. Well, hopefully we are now one step closer. So last year we submitted our application for planning consent. Because of the size of the project, it's what's known as a nationally significant infrastructure project, which means that there is a standard statutory process that we need to go through. We submitted our application last year. That was accepted by something called the Planning Inspectorate, which is the organisation that is managing that process. And now members of the public and local organisations can register on the Planning Inspectorate's website to take part in that planning process. And at the moment, they can that your listeners can put forward their views and issues that they would like to be considered by an independent panel that will be hearing evidence on our proposals during a formal examination that will take place later this year. By registering on the website, your listeners can be kept up to date with the process, but also be given the opportunity to take part in that process. And that's really important because it means that we'll ensure that we've got proper, fair scrutiny of our proposals and that we can all demonstrate that we have balanced those significant benefits for road users at Dartford that we were just talking about with minimising the impact of the new road on local communities and indeed the environment.
When do you hope, and obviously you mentioned there's very important processes to go through and loopholes and legalities and everything. When do you hope to actually start building the thing? Yeah,
so kind of 2025 is going to be probably the earliest that we can start building it. There is a process to go through, and there's lots of information on the Planning Inspectorate's website that talks about that process and how long each step of the process takes. But we hope that the new road will be open 29/30, something like that. So you'll start to feel the benefits from there on in, when we'll start to take traffic from the Dartford crossing, move it over to Lower Thames crossing and free up that new capacity, new opportunities for journey over the Lower Thames crossing, but also removing 20% of the traffic as well from the Dartford crossing and easing congestion there.
I mean, is it going to be out of date by the time it's built? Then we're talking about the data you've used to try and plan the scope of just how big a project you're going to need. Will that be out of date by the time it's actually built, or have you forecast ahead and think, well, this is how many cars are going to be using it in 2930, so we need to build it for that?
We have indeed, and actually our traffic modelling runs up to 2044. So we are very much planning for the future. We are seeing a constant increase in traffic actually over Dartford. We're seeing traffic levels rise year on year. Yes, absolutely, that's accounted for in those assessments, and that traffic assessment that we've done and that we've published and has been now published on the Planning Inspectorate's website, and we've submitted as part of our application for planning consent.
3 years ago, I think around the COVID madness, the cost of building the new crossing was estimated at £9 billion. Is that still the budget, or what sort of prospects, what cost and predictions are you having to build this?
Yeah, so we've always given a range of costs, and as I'm sure everyone will appreciate, as we have more detail, the costs become more accurate. Our most recent estimate is actually £8.3 billion, so slightly less than that £9 billion that you quoted a second ago. Like all businesses, the construction industry is facing increased costs in terms of materials, transport, wages, and we're not immune to those inflationary pressures that we are all experiencing in our daily lives. But as more detail becomes known in the coming months, we will bring on board our delivery partners, so those companies that are going to be constructing the new crossing for us. And as they come on board, we'll have more and more refined costs, and we'll be able to give more certainty on what the cost will be to the taxpayer.
Has that estimation gone down with the cost of with the price of living, et cetera, from 9 billion to 8.3 billion?
So I said we've always published a range. So over time, I think it was anything from 5 billion up to perhaps the 8 or 9 billion that you're quoting. But as I say, as time goes on, we'll have more and more definitive costs for that.
Your job title, Emily, is Head of Benefits. What will the benefits be for Essex as a result of what you want to do, what you hope to do?
Yeah, so we're going to see a much quicker journey times for those travelling, particularly between Essex, Kent and the Medway region. We're going to see more reliable journey times. It means that when we're getting in our cars, we'll have a lot more certainty of how long it's going to take us to get to our destination. Now, what that means is that we will be more likely to take better paid jobs, for example, that might be further afield. It also means that we will have that confidence in how long it's going to take. It also actually puts something like 400,000 extra jobs available to local communities within a 30-minute commute. So you start to see that those journey times and making people's journeys quicker actually opens up opportunities for your listeners. We're also going to see benefits for businesses, because you'll find that, again, they will benefit from that increased reliability and also better access to people. So thinking about the employees that businesses are trying to hire, you'll find that they have a bigger pool of people to choose from, and indeed they become more effective as more productive as businesses. And that, of course, is great, not just for businesses, but for the wider economy across the region.
So you spoke a bit about the benefits. When we've spoken about this in the past, Emily, a raft of things get brought up in objection to the plans, as I'm sure you'll be aware of. And one of the things that often comes up is if you build another crossing, won't that just fill up immediately and just encourage more of us to use our cars, when actually the drive should be to spend all this money? It's £8.3 billion, which we could instead use to increase bus routes, train journeys. There's this. They want to build a tram system, I know, around the Thurrock area. Why not focus on that instead of improving the road infrastructure?
So we believe that there is a need for both. We absolutely believe there is a need for that increased transport connectivity. You've only got to be at Dartford 10 o'clock in the morning on a Friday. That's when the evening peak starts. So there is absolutely a huge demand for road travel. And unfortunately, no amount of investment in rail or other public transport methods is going to reduce that demand. And we've also got to remember that it's very important because of the link to the ports. So for international trade, 70% of all the goods that are transported into the UK via Dover, or into or out of the UK via Dover, 70% of those goods actually come via the Dartford crossing. So there is an incredible need to ensure that we can provide that reliability. And actually, even as vehicles are decarbonising, so thinking forward to 2030, when you'll no longer be able to buy a brand new petrol or diesel car due to the new government policy, we will still need roads for those vehicles to travel on. So it's very much part of an integrated approach. And indeed, as part of our proposals, we're also investing in infrastructure for walkers and cyclists. So over 40 miles of new or improved footpaths, cycle paths and bridleways will be delivered alongside Lower Thames Crossing. So it really is a holistic package of investment that supports both road users and those walkers, cyclists and horse riders as well.
And the other thing that crops up, and you mentioned there walkers, is the environmental impacts. You're going through some ancient woodland to build this that's been there for generations. Could there have been more work done to ensure not so much damage was done to the environment, to the Kent and therefore the Essex countryside as well?
Yeah, I mean, you alluded earlier on to how long it's taken us to get to this step of the process. We have spent many years looking at how we can minimise the impact of the proposals and of the new road on the environment. We absolutely appreciate and agree that ancient woodland is irreplaceable. So we have done as much as we can to reduce the impact, and we have done that significantly over recent years. And indeed, that is set out in our application for planning consent. We've committed to planting over 1 million new trees, to building green bridges that connect habitats. And indeed, there's over 800 hectares across the scheme of semi-natural habitats that will be created to improve biodiversity as a result. That combined with the new public amenities, so a new public park overlooking the Thames and a new community woodland in Brentwood, we believe means that we have found the best balance of meeting the objectives and delivering those benefits for road users who desperately need more reliable transport connectivity, with minimising the impact on the environment and indeed having a positive net impact on biodiversity in the region.
Also had a lot of objections from people living in Thurrock about the disruption this new crossing is going to have on their lives and this being built on their doorsteps. What can you say to alleviate their fears?
It's hugely challenging. Actually, we absolutely appreciate both the uncertainty and the concerns that people have over such a big construction programme. I think we have published a huge number of assessments as part of both the community impacts consultation that we held last year and also within that development consent order application that we hope really help the local community to understand both what we're proposing and what we're going to do to make sure that we minimise the impact. And of course, during the construction period, we will continue to engage with the communities to make sure that we have got avenues there where they can help us to understand what the impacts are and hopefully help us to avoid them before they occur. But we will certainly ensure that we have that two-way dialogue throughout the construction period to make sure that both we and our construction partners do everything that we possibly can to keep disruption to a minimum and indeed maximise local benefits for local communities during that construction period, be it by providing jobs on the scheme, supporting local businesses and things like that.
And Emily, just on the BBC Essex Twitter feed about 4 minutes ago, we posted the National Highways video that has just been released that shows this fly-through video of what it's going to look like. Explain what the significance of that is.
So it's really important to us, I think, that local communities understand what we're proposing to build. So we took a helicopter up so that we could get some real footage of the area. We wanted to show how the proposals that we've submitted as part of our planning application integrate with the landscape. And indeed, what we hope that video shows is how 80% of the route is now either below the ground or hidden behind an embankment. It shows where those 1 million trees that we're going to be planting are going to be. It shows those green bridges, and it shows that public park overlooking the Thames and indeed our new community woodland up in Brentwood. So this is really about helping local communities to understand what we're proposing to build, to help to inform their responses and hopefully to inform the conversations during the planning process.
Thank you for joining us this morning. That's Emily Dawson from the Lower Thames Crossing project. She is head of benefits there. Feel free to get in touch. Let me know what you think of what Emily has said. Key takeaways there: £8.3 billion, hoping to have it started in 2025 and finished 2029, 2030. Still going through a few planning processes and legalities, but they're hoping 2025 starts, 29-30 finish. Sounds ages away, doesn't it? And £8.3 billion. Do you think that is the best way to spend £8.3 billion improving the roads and getting a second lower Dartford crossing, a lower Thames crossing, or would you prefer we pile that into trains, into tram systems? I mean, you could put loads of tram, £8.3 billion. You could put tracks everywhere, couldn't you, for that? Feel free, get in touch, let me know. 0800 111 40 41. We are going to chat to the Thames Crossing Action Group next to see what their position is on how things are shaping up. Ben Fryer with you on BBC Essex. It's 10:39. We're taking a step back at the Lower Thames Crossing on the programme today, and just trying to stick to the basics, because for years it's been consultation this, it's been campaign that, it's been planning application this, and we just spoke to Emily Dawson from the Lower Thames Crossing project, who gave us some dates and costings of what things are looking like at the moment. They want it started in 2025. It's going to cost £8.3 billion by current estimates, and they hope to have it finished by 2029, 2030. At around the same time the Lower Thames Crossing project was announced, the Thames Crossing Action Group was born, and chair of that group is Laura Blake, who's been on BBC Essex numerous times over the year, and welcome her back to the airwaves once again. Hi to you, Laura.
Hi, Ben. Thanks for having me back on.
I'm going to do the same thing I did to you as I did with Emily, Laura. Let's go right back to the start. Why was your group set up, and what were its objectives?
Initially, obviously, it was to do with the impacts that people were aware of and concerned about. And the more we looked into it, the more we realised that what was being presented wasn't going to solve the problems that it was supposed to be. In addition to that, the consultation was not adequate. They should have, right back at the start, been consulting on options at location A, which is down by the current crossing, as well as ones around location C, which is where the preferred route is now one of the options from. But the government asked them to consult on both those locations, and National Highways didn't. They purely focused on a bias consultation on location C, and that really stirred us up, because obviously that is not fair.
That's happened now, Laura, though, hasn't it? The result is the route that they're planning to build. So what are you standing for now? Do some of the things that you objected to all that time ago still stand now? And if so, what are they?
Most definitely. And there is obviously a huge list. There are people's homes and lives and businesses that would be impacted and lost. The impact to the environment, the loss of the green belt, the loss of agricultural land. You know, we've got food security issues. That's become even more relevant now. The carbon emissions just becomes more and more relevant as new evidence comes out about climate change. 6.6 million tonnes of carbon is a huge amount. And it's actually one that a Lower Thames Crossing boss has admitted, if they don't resolve that issue, will mean that the crossing can't go ahead.
Do we need something there, Laura, because of, I mean, I'm sure you've been held up crossing over the bridge and under the tunnel at Dartford on the M25. Do we need something there?
Look, I'm not denying that there's not a problem at the Dartford crossing, but the fact is the evidence shows that what is being proposed with the Lower Thames crossing won't solve those problems. Emily ran off the figures to say how much traffic is using it. And she also said that they're expecting the LTC to take away 20% of the traffic. The fact is, you'd need to take more than 25% of traffic away to bring it back below design capacity. And she also didn't mention the fact that it would increase cross-river journeys by 50% if the LTC goes ahead.
What's the alternative, though, Laura, if you don't want another Thames crossing? Because you have admitted there are issues as a bottleneck around the amount of traffic that is there now that's only going to rise. What's the alternative?
Well, Emily touched on it as a benefit about the Port of Dover and the connection for the port, saying that 70% of the goods that come out of Dover actually come across the crossing. And that is right. There's 42% of the traffic using the Dartford crossing is goods vehicles. Now, if you consider the fact that the Port of Dover doesn't have rail connection, and obviously rail's a lot more sustainable, there are also discussions going on about a new rail improvement connection through from Ashford round to Reading, avoiding the London where it's congested for rail already. And that's around £4.5 billion cost. That would take so much freight off of the roads and onto more sustainable rail. But options like this have not been given adequate consideration. National highways, the clue is in the name. They're focused on highways. They're not interested in other sustainable options.
So would you say, you'd want to look at ways of getting 42% of the freight that comes over there? So would you accept a rail freight route from Kent into Essex instead of a
the problem with it coming into Essex, the problem with it coming into Essex is then it has to go through London. London is already congested when it comes to rail, especially for freight. That's why the option that goes from Ashford around through, imagine following around the M25, so through round by Gatwick and up through to Reading, bypassing London. London can't take any more rail freight. I've spoken to top people in the rail freight industry on this. They think that a solution is needed to avoid London and get that freight onto the rail and take it and bypass London round and then up through to the Midlands and other locations.
What do you think, Laura, is the situation in Thurrock? Do you think the people in Thurrock want this lower Thames crossing, or do you think they don't?
It's a mix. Obviously, there are some people and people that have taken the time to do the research that understand it won't solve those problems. There are other people that will blindly trust what National Highways are telling them and feel that it will solve the problem. And unfortunately, they would find out all too late if it did go ahead that it won't solve those problems. The other thing is coming down to the cost of this, Ben. You've mentioned that when you were talking to Emily. She's saying 8.3 billion. That's the lower end of the estimate that came out in a report by the National Audit Office, which actually had an upper end of 10.1 billion. And that was data that was 2 years out of date. And there are reports coming out on these costings using 2020 figures that are meant to be offering guidance and transparency to ministers that are making the decisions about spending these huge amounts of taxpayers' money. It's misleading them. 2 years out of date. We know what's happened in that time. We all know how much the cost's gone up, inflation's gone up. There are big changes with the cost, I'm sure, that haven't been revealed yet, and it needs to be looked into urgently.
Laura, we heard Emily say, look, 2025 is when we want to start, 2030 is when we want to finish. It seems as though this is something you can't stop now. What are the next steps for your campaign, or are you still intent on trying to change policy?
We most definitely are going to be presenting our evidence to the Planning Inspectorate. They're there to actually listen to the people that are making the representations and then to consider and make a recommendation to the Transport Secretary, who will have the ultimate decision. We know that there's evidence there that shows that this isn't something that should be going ahead. We will be fighting that. We will be presenting that to everybody, and including the Inspectorate. And when she talks about opening in 2030, with construction starting in 2025, those figures don't add up either. They've always said 6 to 7 years construction. And let's face it, we all know how things like that overrun. You're starting in 2025. You're not going to open in 2029, 2030 if you're talking about 6 to 7 years construction. It all seems to be that the narrative from National Highways is misleading in a way to suggest that people that want the crossing are going to get what they want as quickly as possible, when the reality is likely to be extremely different.
Laura, can I ask you finally, I mean, you've not always been chair of the Thames Crossing Action Group, but, you know, you've been thrust in and you've spoken to us. What were you doing and what do you still do now in addition to being what you are as chair of the Thames Crossing Action Group?
Yeah, my background actually is in the music industry. I used to run music venues in London and book acts like Ed Sheeran before he became famous. So yeah, that's my background. And I never dreamt in a million years that I would have been learning and researching and getting to know the things that I do now. Who would have thought someone from the music industry would be learning about traffic modelling and carbon emissions and everything else that we have to. But this is how passionately I feel about this. And the more you look into it, the worse it gets. And that's why I and many others continue to fight this.
Are you full time at this now? Is this your day-to-day job almost?
Well, yeah, definitely, especially now that we're going into this examination. There are 63,000 pages of documentation, and much of that information is stuff that National Highways have refused to share with us and local authorities up until this point. They've kept the information that is super relevant to what's going on hidden away, and only now do we have to wade through 63,000 pages to find out the information, which no doubt is going to bring extra evidence that needs to be heard.
How many pages did you have to go through to book Ed Sheeran at a gig in London? Couple?
His team came to us and we booked him, and he's absolutely a lovely guy. I'm so proud of him. He played at our venues a lot. Nice, intimate surroundings before he did what he did now, but he deserves every success. He's a great guy.
Laura Blake, thank you very much. And things you didn't know about Laura Blake, chair of the Thames Crossing Action Group, great mates with Ed Sheeran by the sounds of it. Thank you, Laura, for joining us. We digressed a little there, but I was interested. You know, we've spoken about this before. People who start these organisations, they're passionate about something that they're hell bent on stopping something happening, and they're doing other jobs, and then all of a sudden decide they want to fight something. And Laura has actually been one of the longest serving ones, I think, longest serving campaigners for a number of years now. Thank you, Laura. Where do you stand on this then? You've got £8.3 billion. £8.3 billion. Laura disputes that, says it might be £10.1 billion. The task is to try and ease congestion at the Dartford crossing. You've got 8.3 billion quid, right? Is another crossing the way to go? What else would you do? What else would you do instead? Laura spoke about building a railway that bypasses London. So all the stuff that comes in at Dover doesn't end up going over or under the Dartford Tunnel. And then all the stuff going to Dover doesn't go over the Dartford Bridge. Would that be a better solution? Do you think there is too much of a reliance on our roads for our freight? Happy to go down that route if you want to talk about that. 08000 321 333 is the WhatsApp number. Start your message with the word Essex. You can get in touch on the phones as well, which I much rather prefer. If you want to ring in, that's fine. You can do so on a daily basis at 0800 111 4041.